Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here, and welcome to the Redeemed and Restored broadcast on my YouTube channel, where we connect every Friday so that together we can intentionally discover the faithfulness of God. So today's episode of Redeemed and Restored is entitled Benches, Trees, and Speed Bumps. Oh my. I'm always amazed at the number of scriptures that encourage us to wait on the Lord. It just must be part of our human nature to want to take control and make things happen. I know that's how I've always been. A type A, doer, impulsive, one who flies by the seat of my pants. I call myself a pantster rather than a plotter or a planner. But oh, the joy we experience when we wait on Him and He does immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine, which just proves that waiting on Him is so much better than getting out in front of Him and trying to hurry things up. So I'm shooting the intro to this episode on the swinging bench on my front porch, a place where I love to sit when it's warm. Not like today, it's a little chilly out here. But I love to just sit here and ponder those times when God did so much to shape me and mold me into someone who could proclaim His faithfulness. So you know the drill. Be sure to like, follow, share, comment, click on the notification bell in one of those corners. And I would just love to hear from you and hear how God is working in your life. So hey, let's get started. Well, hey everyone, Athena Dean Holtz here for this week's edition of Redeemed and Restored. Today's segment is titled Benches, Trees, and Speed Bumps. Oh my. My time in San Antonio was framed with a growing discontent with the fact that I was still single. I'd been divorced for 13 years, had not been on one date in all that time. Of course, the entire time I was in the cult, the doctrine required that you're never free to remarry unless you were widowed. But even then, having a spouse was considered a distraction to ministry work for everyone except for the leaders. So most of us under that teaching made our peace with being single forever. This, I learned, is typical for controlling leadership and cult-type organizations. Whatever they can do to dominate you is the name of the game. And if they can split up your marriage so that they can actually have more control over you, that is their aim. I lost track of all the couples that ended up divorced during my time over that 13 years, but I was the first of many. And since my ex was remarried, there really wasn't any opportunity or hope for restoration or reconciliation of our marriage. And I felt incredibly cheated when a couple would walk by holding hands, or I'd see a post on Facebook of one of my friends over 50 who found her man of her dreams second time around. I sounded like a broken record. All right already, God, can we just move this thing along? I've gone through so much healing. I think I'm ready for my Mr. Right. I'm sure he was probably shaking his head up there saying, "Oh, daughter, you are nowhere near ready. I have so much more to teach you before you are." I had determined that God was going to have to bring me that guy. I didn't want to do a bunch of dating. I just knew that God would drop him on my doorstep. More than once, I got impatient and signed up for Christian Mingle or some other online dating service, thinking perhaps I would find him there. And every time God said, nope, that is not how you will find the one I have for you. I knew it was him, and I knew that way of finding a husband would definitely leave me wondering if it was me or him doing the orchestrating. So multiple times I deleted my account and flushed $100 down the drain because I didn't really listen before I signed up, or I wouldn't have. At one point, I'd reconnected with an old author friend who'd been through a nasty divorce about 18 months before. I loved his heart for ministry, even though he really wasn't my type. But I thought perhaps I was supposed to wait for him to heal from his divorce while we just remained friends. It's funny how I had this idea from the false doctrine that I had been under for so long, that in order to do God's will, it had to be something that you hate doing. After all, if you are supposed to die to self, then anything that fills you with joy must be evil. So him not being my type seemed to be what I should rejoice in if I'm really spiritual. During this time, the Lord began using visuals to speak to me. The first was benches. In my quiet times, he kept whispering to me, "Be still and know that I am God." Every day I would walk around in my neighborhood, and all of a sudden, I just began seeing benches in front of every house I walked by, on the porch, in the yard. It seemed like I saw each one, and I would get this little nudge from the Lord. Be still and know. Those benches made me desire to sit a bit, be still, and think of him. I was so in awe of the way God spoke to me through those many benches that I happened upon. The next visual he used to speak to me was during a time when I was especially whining. I mean, Lord, can't we just hurry this up already? I'm ready for a husband. As I was on my walks, he began to draw my attention to the trees that I walked by. Some had been damaged by fire or storm, showing a huge scar on one side, but then new growth coming out the other. A few trees in that neighborhood that I was in had these huge branches bowing low in what seemed like reverence before their creator. Then there were these huge trees. They were so majestic. It was one of my times of being exceptionally whiny. And it was as if the Lord whispered to my heart, "How quickly do you think these trees grow?" Before I could even answer, he reminded me, "They grow slowly, and so do you. Don't be in such a hurry, my daughter. You have more growing to do before you're ready for a husband." Not what I wanted to hear. I continued to think that I was supposed to be patiently waiting for my friend, but it just didn't seem to be gaining any momentum. Then one morning, I was walking over to Starbucks, about a mile away from our house, and about 2/3 of the way there, down my street, I came upon a speed bump. The Lord had me slow down and stand there for a few minutes, just pondering the rounded ridge covered in thick white stripes. After all, he'd been talking to me about slowing down, being still, allowing his timetable to rule in my healing and relationships. And as I stood staring at this speed bump, a little white car appeared out of nowhere. It just flew over that ridge in the road, not slowing down in the least. My heart sank as I cried out to the Lord, "Oh God, that is just like me. You put things in my life to get my attention, to slow me down. And all I do is keep going at breakneck speed. These 3 visuals worked in my heart an intentional slowing down, recognizing God, asking Him what He was saying to me. They caused me to consider my ways and make changes in the way I lived my life. Together, they created a symphony of classical notes and tempos, wooing me to wait patiently for God and His good plans. Over the next 5 months, God was working on me in mysterious ways. I whined a lot less, as everywhere I looked, I was reminded to slow down, listen to Him, and trust His time. So hey, thanks for joining me today. I'd sure appreciate it if you would like, follow, share, and comment on the episode. Maybe even start a conversation in this discussions tab. And I would love to hear from you and hear how God is working in your life. My name is Athena Dean Holtz, and this is Redeemed and Restored. So thanks for joining us today on the Redeemed and Restored video broadcast, brought to you by me, Athena Dean Holtz, who happens to be a horse lover, and the Romans 828 bookstore, which is a division of Redemption Press, which is right down the street that way, around the corner, right here in downtown Enumclaw, where everything is happening. So I would love to have you review and share this broadcast with friends, family, and others who could use the encouragement. And if you know someone who might prefer the audio podcast version of today's episode, you can go over to redeemedandrestoredpodcast.com and share a link from there. So thank you so much for joining me today. See you next week right here on YouTube for another episode of Redeemed and Restored.